Oh yeah, she's here. She's coming back.
I'm Shea, I direct the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, and I'm delighted to be with you here today. And I really appreciate the fact that forced organ harvesting in China is the first discussion of religious persecution at this 2022 summit. It is that egregious. And I'm honored to share the stage with Gutmann. Ethan has been the world's foremost human rights field researcher on China's forced organ harvesting. Since the time that the West first heard of this atrocity in the early years of the century, Ethan's book, The Slaughter, about Falun Gong as a target of forced organ harvesting, is path-breaking, as is Bloody Harvest, the book he collaborated on with the great David Kilgore and David Madison. Ethan continues his research on forced organ harvesting by focusing on the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So what does forced organ harvesting look like in China? First, it starts with a patient in need of a heart transplant calling a transplant center and getting an appointment on a day certain within the next day or the next few days or weeks, an incredibly short time compared with the West, where you have to wait months or years for a transplant. The transplant hospital then makes a tissue match from the government database that has been collected from the vast number of detainees, especially the clean living religious minorities. And this includes virtually every religious minority in China, starting first most with Falun Gong, but also Tibetan Buddhists, Uyghur Muslims, Kazakhs, and others from Xinjiang, and from House Church Christians. The detention system then locates the selected detainees and sends him to the medical center where surgeons become the executioners and kill him while he's still alive for his organs. And Jacob Levy in the prestigious American Journal of Transplantation this spring. China now has the world's second largest organ transplant industry, and it kills two birds with one stone. It literally kills unwanted minorities, and it makes a killing in profits. It's now a $1 billion industry, and China has, with forced organ harvesting, both monetized and incentivized repression, religious repression. Under pressure from the international community and Ethan's work, China announced in 2015, this is all stopped. It has stopped with the introduction of a voluntary donor registry. The West transplant sector, including here in the United States, accepts this claim and partners with China's. So Ethan, I'm going to start by asking you, is this correct? Has forced organ harvesting ended? What has your research found?
There were several events that took place around 2015. The first was the Chinese suddenly had a much higher hill to climb to make the claim that they were stopping this. And that came from the discovery that they were not doing 10,000 transplants per year, but 60,000 to 100,000 transplants per year. This came directly from data produced by Chinese hospitals. It just nobody had really bothered to look at or collate it. The second problem came in with Robertson and Jacob Levy, again, coming in and showing that the voluntary donation numbers were actually based on an equation. In other words, they had a perfect curve. That's impossible. It's 1,000,000 to 1. So if you have a successful voluntary donation program, you don't need an equation. You just state the numbers. But they didn't do that. Now they also had one more problem. They didn't have enough organs anymore. Falun Gong built the back of the transplant industry in China, and suddenly it was no longer, Falun Gong were getting older. The amount of people in detention was starting to decrease. So at that point, they started going to Falun Gong homes. And also at that point, about 2014, 2015, they announced the program of health checks for every Uyghur in Xinjiang, or East Turkestan, up over the age of 12. No Han Chinese, just Uyghurs. These are blood tests. They're compatible with cross-matching, tissue typing. So what's really going on? What's the real answer? Where are they getting the organs from? And this is where I think my own research, very distinct research, comes in. So most of these witnesses are from Kazakhstan. Every single witness, about 20, was from a different camp. Not a single person shared the same camp. And yet they all describe something very similar. About 2.5 to 5% of the camp residents were disappearing every year. And these people were aged 28 to 29. Now 28 to 29 is when the Chinese medical system has established that your organs are the most viable. They're no longer growing, but you're at the peak of health. And they do it with live organ harvesting, so it's like cutting a flower. So you cut a flower under running water, and you transfer it to the person. Well, in this case, what does that look like? Well, one thing it looks like is we discovered, I should say, wheelchair of Radio Free Asia discovered a hospital. And its name is the Aksu Infection Hospital. Now, I've been able to talk to witnesses who determined this was a SARS hospital. And it was built in that time. And then it became a hospital for religious business. And then it became a transplant hospital. And she was able to establish this with a couple of phone calls. What surrounds the hospital? That's the micro. A camp of 33,000 Uyghurs and Kazakhs surrounds that hospital. Next to the hospital, 900 meters away in one direction, is another camp of 16,000 people. And to the north, 900 meters away, is a crematorium. It's the largest crematorium I've ever seen on Google Earth. It's a double burn method. It's very high velocity. And I've talked to witnesses who lived in Aksu, who used to drive that road, and they describe the smell of burning flesh or burning bone. Okay, 20 minutes away is an airport, Aksu International Airport. In Aksu International Airport, there's a green passage, it's called. It's a lane. It specifically states that it's for human organs. It's for export. This is a fast lane. It was set up by China Southern Airlines and a very evil doctor in China some years ago. Where are they going? Well, we found one place for them, which is a hospital right near Shanghai. It's in Shanghai region. And that hospital, the kidneys went up 100%. It's a big brother relationship to the same Aksu Infection Hospital. And their liver transplants went up 200%. And that was just 2 years ago. Now, the final thing is this hospital was the first to perform a double lung transplant in the middle of the pandemic. Now, this was an advertisement to the world that China was open for business. So to my mind, when I put these two facts together, and I've talked to these witnesses in person, and they've seen terrible things, and I've talked to a witness who witnessed the blood tests that were given to all the inmates being put up on the wall, and check marks being put next to them, and those people disappear in the middle of the night. There's no doubt in my mind what's going on here. This is tremendous continuity between what happened to Falun Gong and what's happened to the Uyghurs now. It's just been compressed into a small space, relatively small space by Chinese standards.
Ethan, you mentioned a case. You take one of your distinctive methods of research is just taking testimony from survivors and witnesses, survivors of the camps, that is. You told one case about a man, a son of someone.
There are two cases like that that I discovered in Kazakhstan. One case is a son and the father died in the camps. And I'm not an expert on Muslim burial methods, but they do tend to have a kind of a feature where there's a tunnel and then the body is laid down horizontally at the end of the tunnel. In this case, the boy, young man, made his way into the graveyard and in the middle of the night and got down there. And his father's body was covered by a very tough plastic material. He cut that open and he discovered that all the organs had been taken. Another case, a woman saw somebody she knew, saw the body after it had been harvested before it had been taken off to the crematorium for burning.
We're almost out of time, but I just wanted to ask you for a quick answer on this one. The World Health Organization has an advisory task force against organ trafficking. Have they shown any interest in your research? Has their chair of Harvard's, Dr. Francis Delmonico, talked to you, taken you seriously?
Well, we've talked a bunch, but and I offered him full access to every piece of information I had, including confidential tapes. He's shown no interest in looking at those and talking about them whatsoever. I would say this, the WHO used to actually carry Beijing's water. They were the ones who would respond when a report came out and so forth, and they would just parrot Beijing talking points. They've stopped doing that. There's a kind of a wall of silence now. There seems to be a real, on the other hand, they don't want to admit that they were wrong, that engagement with China failed completely.
Well, instead of being a gift of life, organ transplantation in China is being used as hideous as anything that Nazi doctors did back then. So it really underscores the need for the bill, the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting bill to be passed in Congress, where it's been pending for 2 years, and bills like that around the world.
I just add one thing. I mean, we are looking at an ongoing situation. The estimate I come out with is 25 to 50,000 liters per year, possibly some Kazakhs included with that, are being harvested for their organs. This is happening every day. It's not an enormous number. Most likely, the efforts that have been made here in Washington and indeed across the Western world have probably prevented this program from exploding. But this is a constant grip of 28-year-olds who are the most vital people in the community, usually the ones who are the most threatening to the state because they're potential activists. It is a truly human tragedy.
And it really is galling to me, even that American hospitals and preeminent hospitals and transplant hospitals and medical schools partner with these transplant centers in China in every way, training hundreds of doctors, surgeons, and collaborating research and conferences and educational exchanges. But we're out of time, so thank you very much. Thank you all.